Officer Craig Lehner's memory brought the city together in mourning today.
Now, the Buffalo dive team member was remembered for his patriotism, his personality, and his drive to help those around him no matter the cost. And the day of remembrances started in Hamburg at the Lakeside Memorial Funeral Home, where Patriot Guard riders joined the motorcade with Officer Lehner's body on the journey up Route 5 to the funeral at KeyBank Center, where thousands of police officers were waiting for him.
Inside, we heard stories of all of the lives he touched and the lasting impact he made. His body left in a procession up Delaware Avenue, passing Western New Yorkers who lined the streets to pay their respects. That journey ended at Forest Lawn Cemetery, where officers, family, and friends said their final goodbyes.
We'll hear from reporters at all of those stops along the way, starting tonight with Claudine Ewing at KeyBank Center. And it certainly was an emotional service there today, Claudine.
Well, honestly, the emotion was really seen on the faces of the family of Officer Craig Lehner. After all, this tragedy hit them extremely hard, but it really touched people across Western New York, especially here in Buffalo, and people from everywhere came from all walks of life.
Take a second and look at the mother of Officer Craig Lehner walking into the KeyBank Center along with the rest of her family. While no one from the family spoke, Lehner's family in blue spoke well.
I can't lie to you, this is a tough one.
Lehner's partner and best friend, Officer Tommy Champion, fighting tears.
Let the memory of my friend, my partner, my brother, not distress you, not debilitate you, but instead let it inspire you.
His words got a standing ovation. And then there was the canine dog shield just a few feet away from the casket. But a passionate New York Army National Guard sergeant explained how Lehner bonded with his trainer, Mike Williams, who was then killed in a roadside bomb.
You could see how Craig lived his life and knew that every day was a gift. He lived his life without fear and was determined to accomplish his goals and dreams.
Buffalo's mayor called Lehner's life worthy of praise.
I commend him for a job well done, and I will forever remember him as one of Buffalo's finest, one of America's finest, and as a shining example of what it means to protect and to serve.
Carry on my way. A beautiful video tribute helped wrap up the service before the recessional, and there were moments when a mother's tears told the story.
There's enough people seeing how we can pull together as a community that you're going to get a lot of help and a lot of people helping you who've made promises that they will keep them.
May you rest in peace.
Thank you, Officer Craig Lehner.
Officer Lehner's name will go on the wall at the National Law Enforcement Memorial in Washington, D.C., and it's going on that wall because he paid the ultimate sacrifice, his life. Reporting live, Claudine Ewing, Channel 2 News.
Thank you, Claudine. And Terry and Kim Pagula donated the KeyBank Center for the funeral today, and they are also paying the cost to hold it. They did not publicize the decision, saying that it isn't something they wanted to make a big deal about. The stadium crew had to make a quick change overnight as well because the Sabres played a home game last night.
And the funeral was followed by a solemn ceremony at Forest Lawn Cemetery, where Officer Lehner's body is buried tonight.
And our Dave McKinley is there live tonight to show us how he was laid to rest. Dave.
Well, this graveside service, as you can imagine, had all the trappings of both a full police and a full military funeral. After all, Lehner served both his city as an officer and his country as a veteran. Now, when the flag-draped coffin arrived at Forest Lawn, hundreds of officers from countless agencies stood at attention amid a pouring rain in full salute. The brief service included a 21-gun salute and the playing of taps and a release of doves.
In Psalm 55, they say, "Oh, that I had wings like a dove, so I could fly away and be at rest."
Forest Lawn was chosen as the final resting place for Officer Lehner after Commissioner Dan Dorenda, I should say first, though, was the one who had the honor of presenting the folded flag taken from atop of the casket of Officer Lehner to Lehner's grieving mother. shield, his canine partner, of course, also with the black covering on him and the Superman logo on that coat, was also front and center at this graveside service. Now, I was going to say that according to someone who was involved in the funeral arrangements, Forest Lawn was chosen as Officer Lehner's final resting place because he had a buddy from the military who was killed and who was buried here at Forest Lawn. We've also learned that the cremated remains of a brother who predeceased Lehner will be buried with him, and provisions have been made for the remains of Shield to be buried here in the future when his time comes as well. Of course, there were lots of people who stood outside in the rain and witnessed the procession as it made its way to Forest Lawn, and Emily Lampa has that part of our team coverage. Emily?
I do. Thank you so much, Dave. I'm here on Delaware Avenue, just one section of the roadway where folks from all over Western New York came to watch the funeral procession of Officer Craig Lehner. Hundreds lined the roadways, and it was a procession route with flags, people holding hands over their hearts as the motorcade led the casket through downtown Buffalo. Now, it was a touching journey because the procession passed both the current police headquarters on Franklin Street as well as the new headquarters on Niagara Square, as well as driving under a massive flag hoisted by the fire department at North Street. Now, people I spoke to along the procession route, they said showing up was their way of paying their respects and showing their support, not just for the Buffalo Police Department, but law enforcement everywhere.
I knew there were going to be tons of policemen there from all different precincts and probably across the state and that. And I think that's a rare opportunity to really come out and thank the police for what they do. So I'm very appreciative.
They did a lot of good things for people, and I've seen it myself. And it's appreciated for everybody, that everybody appreciate what they do for us. And God bless all of them.
Now, that man you saw speaking just there, his name is Felix Rodriguez, and he was one of the first people to show up to Niagara Square this morning to view the funeral procession. He showed up at 11 o'clock. Now, of course, that was the time they had initially thought that the funeral procession would be happening, but the motorcade didn't actually leave the Key Bank Center, as we know, until about 1 in the afternoon. But a lot of people waiting very patiently to see the procession, move through downtown Buffalo. I'm Emily Lampa reporting live from Delaware Avenue. Scott and Mary Ellis, back to you.
Emily, thank you for your report.
Well, police, as you heard, came from all over New York and even across the border to pay respects to today's services. Some of them came simply out of respect, others because they served with Officer Lehner, like State Trooper Aga Dembinska, who came from the Finger Lakes to say goodbye.
I worked with Craig. He was an amazing person. He was funny, sweet, just a good officer to back, a good officer that would back you. And I felt the need to drive 3 hours to pay my respects to him. I think that this might be some type of closure, but it's definitely going to be a very emotional day for us, and I think it's going to help bring us all together as well, remembering him.
We're going to hear more from the huge police response from Heather Lee. That'll be coming up tonight at 5:30.
Now, the size of the police response is part of what made today truly an incredible and historic tribute.
And Danny Spiewak joins us now for a little bit of perspective. Danny?
Yeah, Scott and Mary Alice, this was one of the largest, if not the largest, public funerals to ever happen in our area. Buffalo police estimate that at least 8,000 people, mostly law enforcement, attended the ceremonies today in some fashion. An estimated 6,000 people were inside the arena, and an estimated 2,000 lined the streets for the procession. That's according to the police department's early estimations. From the funeral home all the way to Key Bank Center to the cemetery, this event lasted nearly 5 hours today. Officer Lehner is only the 5th Buffalo police officer to die in the line of duty since 1987. 51 officers have died in the past century and a half. So this is a very rare event, but certainly what we saw today in terms of the crowd will go down in history as one of the largest ever, but again, probably the largest ever. Guys, back to you.
All right, Danny, thank you.
Well, we'll have more coverage from an emotional and inspiring day in Buffalo in just a few minutes. We'll leave you here with part of the video that played at today's service.
Lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more. Carry on.
thank you for your service. May you rest in peace.